I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show we have Jake Boyle, the Chief Commercial Officer from Caleb & Brown. Jake, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. A lot's happened in cryptocurrency in the last 2 to 3 months specifically. Caleb & Brown I'm sure is keeping an eye on this, and it probably affects the operations that you guys are working with, and we're moving towards more regulation, more brokerage and custody of assets as more people get involved. Not everyone wants to be a true libertarian that's holding all of their funds, especially if you have millions or billions of dollars. And if we're going to bring in traditional finance as well, there's a lot of holding other people's money. And of course, that all needs to be regulated and worked out in the fine details with regards to digital assets. I'm excited to dive into what you and your team are working on. Let's just break it out from the top with a high-level overview of what is Caleb & Brown, what are they doing in the blockchain industry, and then we'll dive into all the details.
Perfect. Well, Caleb & Brown, we're a cryptocurrency brokerage. We started in Melbourne, Australia back in 2016, and it's a rather simple business model. We use a traditional brokerage model that involves being able to speak to real people around the world 24/7 to discuss anything related to the cryptocurrency industry. Now, we have full-time traders, operations staff, compliance staff, you name it, to be able to make sure that we can not only buy, sell, and swap over 100 different cryptocurrencies, but we can trade with numerous entity types, numerous structures all around the world. We can keep custody of the assets for you, or we can send them to you. And we have an online portal which you can utilize with the benefits of having the personal broker there, so you can navigate this new asset class with the benefits and the support of more of a traditionally tested business model, being a brokerage.
Very exciting, and thank you for that intro, Jake. And now I'm curious, throughout 2021, obviously with the run-up of Bitcoin, there was a lot more interest from retail investors, but also institutional investors, I'm guessing, as well. And now throughout 2022, we're sort of seeing a drawback in the opposite direction. How have you seen, with customer acquisition and growth of large institutions looking for custody services or other brokerage services, how has that been for Caleb & Brown throughout 2022 in sort of a downwards moving market?
Well, I feel 2022 for cryptocurrency has about the amount of events and volatility which a normal industry would have over the course of a decade. So it's all compounded for a very short period of time. What I would say first and foremost, even before the FTX saga, the collapse of Celsius and the Terra ecosystem, what became very apparent was that institutional and retail investors across the space, there was much more of a push for quality assurance and security and confidence in the service that you're working with. So we've found that a lot more of our clients, no matter what their trading habits are or whatever the amount of investments they have in the ecosystem is, the desire to speak to their broker, to get clarity on questions, whether it's via email, whether it's a 1 a.m. phone call, waking me up, whatever the case is, people are wanting to reach out and they're wanting to get that clarity from a person. In addition to that, there's definitely a lot more fear amongst the market, I'll be completely honest with you. At the end of the day, particularly for the more seasoned investors or people who have got more exposure in traditional markets, seeing the collapse of such large infrastructural pieces in the crypto ecosystem is devastating for confidence. And we feel that ourselves, as a business, the disempowerment that we feel seeing the industry leaders such as FTX have this fall from grace, devastating to say the least. Our job is to make sure that when we talk to clients about that, retail, institutional, whatever the case may be, that we just ensure that we render that baseline service of, you want to have security of your assets. You want to know what you're buying and selling. You want to be aware of slippage. You want to have a degree of foresight and planning behind your portfolio, regardless what the market cycle is.
Great points. And despite what we've seen throughout 2022 and all of these crashes and black swan events, Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency industry, I feel like hasn't taken it's held itself pretty well. Bitcoin isn't even as down as much as the previous cycles. And looking at the long-term 4-year cycles of Bitcoin, each cycle seems to sort of draw down less as there's less volatility and more adoption. And despite all of these crazy events that have happened, it really isn't doing too bad. Compared to where it was before the last run at 3,000, it's still multitudes higher. What do you think about the resilience of how the digital asset industry has really fared all of these crazy events happening?
I think that you mentioned Bitcoin specifically there, and Bitcoin and also Ethereum to a very large extent, they're really the blue chip of the ecosystem. That's probably the right way to describe it. The market cap, the trade volume, the amount of infrastructure surrounding it, institutional investment in those two assets, there is nothing else that really compares with it in the cryptocurrency space. Mm-hmm. So as a result of that, whilst Bitcoin and Ethereum have still suffered dramatically from this bear market and this overall global recession, if we can call it that, at the end of the day, the fundamentals haven't changed. Ethereum still, transactions will continue to work, decentralized finance continues to propagate regardless of what really happens everywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. And for Bitcoin, the supply is not changing. In addition to that, the fundamentals and the thesis behind why Bitcoin started, if anything, you could argue the philosophy behind it has only been proven and strengthened during this period of time where confidence in fiat currencies and confidence in inflation metrics and so forth have really alarmed investors. So from that standpoint, Bitcoin, Ethereum on their own definitely have had their value proposition, if anything, heightened to a large extent in spite of the price volatility suggesting otherwise. The altcoin market is of course higher risk and historically can also show higher return. But the smaller volatility and the less resilience in the market has certainly been shown.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. And with the most recent FTX event, as a brokerage, obviously, I'm guessing the company is already following, regulations and proper operations. Does that event change anything in how Caleb and Brown is run, or do you think there'll be stricter rules moving forward to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again?
Well, in terms of how we run as a business, risk mitigation is a very critical part of our company and how we work, not just in terms of what we do with clients and how we encourage them to set up your own hardware wallets, and if you don't have confidence in doing so, we can help you, we can test the wallets for you. All of this is free of charge, and if you want to leave assets with us, well, we utilize cold storage, and we have a whole array of benefits that we can offer to you, from insurance all the way through to a whole variety of different coins that we can support. At the end of the day, our stance as a company is we want to be slow and steady. We're not running ridiculous advertising campaigns. We've never offered any leverage products. We've never traded with client assets, and we've never borrowed against client assets or allowed clients to borrow from us. So we've always adopted a very conservative and modest approach. We want to be around here for the next 10 years. That's certainly the case in the 10 years after that and after that. And I suppose what we would expect as a business is, seeing that shock has really validated our risk processes that we already employ. And if anything, it's just encouraged us to invest further and further into developing better processes there, from anything from liquidity management to storage facilities to staff training, whatever the case may be. But what I would say, beyond Caleb and Brown, from a broader regulatory stance, I think we can all agree that the regulators are going to have quite a heavy stance on this, and rightly so, when you're looking at so many investors who, without any wrongdoing on their own side, have effectively been scammed or defrauded, if you want to call it that, or if you just want to call it what it really is. And as a result of that, we can expect regulation with regards to custody, things like proof of reserves, things like even extending beyond that in terms of where companies are incorporated, who they're lodging to, who they're responsible to. These are the kind of things that we would probably expect will continue to evolve and become less great as time goes on.
Mm-hmm. Great points, and I think that it's going to take a while to figure it all out. Even just the inner workings of FTX and the court proceedings. Sometimes it moves really slowly compared to how quickly crypto news and updates in the crypto industry can happen. And you mentioned there about sort of working with different jurisdictions. I'm curious on how it works with Caleb and Brown. Say, for example, you're in Australia or you're in London. Can you only deal with customers that are in those areas, or what if an American or Canadian wants to get involved? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. So we're headquartered in Australia. Our company's incorporated in Australia. And I'm in London right now, and I'm kind of in a different country every other day as it currently seems, just not balancing it well with the weather changes. But look, with that being said, we have the office in London to support a 24/7 process. The clients trade all around the clock, and we don't want to be running into any problems or hurdles of not allowing them to capture that volatility when it arises. So principally incorporated in Australia, and that's where our lead compliance team is, and the majority of our regulatory work is, of course, in Australia as a result of that. Now, what we find is there are different parts of regulation within the ecosystem, and our job is to make sure that we, have the resources to stay on top of new changes, look forward into the future, but also make sure that the foundation of, customer protection, all the way through to taxes and whatnot, are all a part of our corporate governance and our corporate structuring. So look, it's quite a headache at the best of times. Being a cryptocurrency business is not an easy thing to be. But fortunately, we have a really strong compliance team and legal advice and whatnot that we get through external counsel, which has made it a process which over the years we've been able to evolve as our regulatory standing has been able to evolve. And outside of some states in the USA, we can trade with clients and different corporate structures and whatnot over there. Same as Canada and same as various parts throughout Europe. We don't provide lending products. We're not trading any complicated financial instruments, and we're certainly not trading securities or anything of that nature. So as a result of that, we're able to have quite a harmonious and simple stance with the way that we kind of work with clients around the world.
That's good to know. And yeah, you mentioned before about playing it safe and taking the long road, which I think is the noble way to do it. And I've heard many times that there's three ways to get wrecked: leverage, leverage, and leverage. And that's what we saw with FTX and all these other platforms, is that they were leveraging, and almost all of them get wrecked eventually. So it's definitely not the way to do it, especially in higher volatile assets like these digital assets. Even Bitcoin can be volatile, although we've seen in the past few months that sometimes the stock market's more volatile than Bitcoin. But with these altcoins, for sure, any which direction can move 10, 20% or 99% down overnight without anything, any news whatsoever the previous day. So applaud you guys for working like that. Now,
no, appreciate it.
With the institutional adoption that sort of happened over the last 2 years, I'm curious if you have any sentiment on what the institutions are doing. Obviously, with all these crashes, they're scare tactics, and retail investors, they really are more emotional, and they get scared, and there's always that game to try and get them to sell at the bottom. But I find that these institutions are playing the long game, right? And compared to where Bitcoin was at 69,000, it's on a fire sale right now. I'm curious if you're seeing any moves of our institutions, without naming names, like still interested in acquiring more Bitcoin at these prices, or do you think that they're waiting it out for another year or so while all of this contagion sort of settles down?
I think it's a combination of both. In the experience that we have, we definitely see a lot more people opting for a dollar cost averaging strategy, which to us indicates that a lot more conservatism to their investment thesis has come about in light of recent events. We do trade with a lot of entities such as, be it family offices, public companies, private companies, whatever the case may be. We have quite a variety of clients that we work with, and the general sentiment is that people are waiting for a further bottom. I will say that's definitely something that's kind of a common theme in the conversations that I've been having, at least over the course of the last month. Now, obviously, when the sentiment is negative, people want lower lows, and when the sentiment is positive, people want higher highs. That's just the nature of how all investors work.
Yeah.
What is definitely the case now, though, is it's conservatism. So we are having people, lots of different client accounts, particularly of the larger institutional side, who are opting to focus more on Bitcoin and Ethereum, the core assets in the ecosystem, and migrate away from those higher risk altcoins that we discussed. And in addition to that, as I mentioned, dollar cost averaging, so just gradually easing into the market, not taking unnecessary degrees of risk or anything of that sort. They're certainly watching the market a lot closer and the events as they unfold. But the general sentiment is that confidence is there in the future of Bitcoin and Ethereum in particular, as well as the crypto market at large. It's just nobody wants to try and catch a falling knife. And with the amount of black swan events we've had recently, there is across the board, consumers definitely feel that probability of more large drops or price volatility periods is likely.
Mm-hmm. Good points, and it's no one knows for sure where the bottom is, but there's that same sentiment where when it was at the top, everyone thinks it's going to go higher, so they're not going to sell yet, right? And at this point, they're waiting for more dips. It's possible that those dips never come.
Yep, exactly right.
And you mentioned there at the beginning about like a 10-year roadmap and a long-term vision. Obviously, I think crypto is still so small compared to where it will be, and a decimal percentage of the size of the stock market. But I want to zoom into the next couple of years or even the next year and look at what are the next steps for the growth of your firm, and is it introducing more products or just finding other jurisdictions for people to get involved with digital assets? How will Caleb & Brown grow throughout 2023?
Oh, awesome question. Well, first of all, I would say that the industry is already showing signs of where it may be going. There's a lot more interest in DeFi, and there's a lot more interest in decentralized exchanges where the volume you can see on chain. So it's very publicly verifiable there. From our stance, what we're seeing by that is people want to trust things that are on chain, and people want to trust things where they can actually communicate and speak to people directly. So with that being said, we're really focusing primarily on customer service as a number one absolute priority at all times. So we want to make sure that people have those contact points. We want to be able to build a user experience through online portal login that can give access to things like research. It can give access to more contact points within the business. They can export trade summaries. They have more of a variety of things that they can do with money that they have in their account with us in terms of the assets they can invest in and so forth. Beyond that, the vision we kind of see for ourselves is more moving away from a brokerage perhaps and moving more towards like an asset manager framework, for lack of a better term. And what I mean by that is being able to offer more complicated products. In an ideal world, we would certainly like to have a managed fund, for example, as something which we would certainly like to be able to offer to clients. Of course, there's a lot of regulatory hurdles there, and it's a very complicated thing to be able to do. But we do feel that more complex products paired with customer service and a better customer experience and investing experience is something that the industry needs. And we just want to corner the part of the crypto ecosystem being customer first and reliable and secure and consistent. So that's really our angle for 2023 and the rest of this year. Very cool.
Looking forward to it, Jake. And with those more advanced products, it seems that DeFi continues to grow and we're tokenizing more real world assets and more like other derivative products and products you'd normally find in the traditional financial industry. Through the smart contract technology, they're able to come out with more sort of hybrid traditional financial products but decentralized. Is there any specific type of products that you're personally interested in where the financial industry or the stock market is growing into blockchain?
For sure. Well, I did mention before, that decentralized finance and decentralized exchanges are clearly booming amongst this downtrend. And because the market's so bearish, people don't really pay attention to the small wins that the ecosystem gets. So I do think that a lot more eyes are going to be on the idea of the use of smart contracts in a lending mechanism. And obviously beyond that, if people are wanting to trade in a much more complicated and leveraged fashion, God fear using the word, but if they are looking to do that, being able to do that in a decentralized environment looks like it's something that people have got a lot of attraction to. So I think that the merge between traditional finance and the cryptocurrency ecosystem, as we move forward into the new year and the year after, there will be a lot more eyes on the idea of being able to have on-chain confirmation and validation of things like loan agreements and ownership and things of that nature. How far that can go is only just being tested at quite a small level. But look, there's still tons of value locked in various lending protocols amongst the DeFi ecosystem. And I think I was reading just earlier today that a lot of the transactional volume that's moved away from some of the traditional centralized exchanges onto some of the more decentralized ones does indicate that there is more confidence in smart contracts as an ecosystem and protocols such as Ethereum. The
real Web3 will shine through eventually here, and I feel like the events that have happened throughout 2022 are just signs to show that, yeah, decentralized finance is the future, and holding it with, partners that you don't really know what they're doing with your funds, and probably leveraging them is not a good idea. So I'm really also looking forward to that more DeFi, decentralized trading growth. So thanks for those insights, Jake. And if people want to learn more about brokerage services and custody of digital assets and other things that Caleb & Brown is working on, what's the best way for them to learn more?
Yeah, well, you can set up an account with us for free anytime. There's no cost in that capacity whatsoever. But beyond that, you can actually contact us just via the phone number and the little intercom message. It'll come up on our website. So if you have any questions, or if you want to chat with one of the brokers, get some perspective, or speak more about what we do, we'd love to offer that anytime that anyone is ever interested across all hours, including Christmas and so forth, if for whatever reason you want to be talking crypto during the holiday season.
Sounds great, Jake. Thank you so much. I will leave the link to the platform as well in the description box below. All the best with Caleb & Brown moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
I appreciate that. You enjoy your day. Thank you.